Good morning, everybody. My name is Ron. I reside in Manitoba. I was diagnosed back in August of 2020 with renal cell carcinoma. In November of last year, the cancer had metastasized to my lungs and also to my spine, and I ended up with a spinal compression.
Thanks, Ron. I'm Doug. I reside in Edmonton, Alberta, and I was diagnosed in March of 2013 with stage 4 metastatic kidney cancer. And forthcoming, I had a full nephrectomy and wedge resections to remove the spots on my lung. So, Ron, when you were first diagnosed, how did you first feel?
Doug, I guess probably the best way to describe it would just be shock. I hadn't been feeling well for I'd say about a year. There were a number of different things that seemed to be popping up. I ended up with high blood pressure. I had my thyroid, I was having issues, and just a real sense of not feeling well at all. And when the summer of 2020 came, I was getting ready to go on holidays. And the final week of work before going on holidays, I just found that I couldn't concentrate at all. I was at work. I really couldn't think. I almost felt like I was just sitting there all day, just waiting for the day to end. And I just had no idea what was wrong. I ended up going and seeing the doctor after my holidays, because after holidays, I still didn't feel refreshed, and found out that I had pneumonia. So they gave me something to take care of that. I went in a short while later, and then they thought maybe I had kidney stones. And then while I was in ER, they told me that I had kidney cancer, which turned out to be stage 4. And shock is the best word. Logically, I heard what they were saying, but it really wasn't registering.
Yeah, I had a similar reaction. I had just been getting off of what I thought was a cold. I was coughing, just a persistent, annoying cough, not a hacking cough, but I'd talk to somebody and I'd run out of breath and start coughing. And the doctor had sent me for some tests for just breathing and a couple of x-rays. And when they did the x-ray, they had to do it twice because they did see something unusual below my lungs. They saw some spots on my lung, which they weren't concerned with, but they noticed something on my kidney. So they did another set. I think I went for a CT scan, I believe. And yeah, the doctor called me in one day and everything was going fine. I thought, well, okay, I've got something going on with my lungs or something that was causing it. And no, he sat me down and told me, no, this has come back as cancer. And I just remember just being kind of numb. I didn't really hear too much. I was by myself. And to my doctor's credit, he put it at the end of the day. So he spent a lot of time with me explaining, but it was sort of just like you're in a dream. It was like I wasn't there. I was there, but I wasn't there. And then I just realized that right at that point, my life just all of a sudden just instantly went from like, I went to work that day. I had a good day. I was coming on my way home, and all of a sudden, boom! It's all different. Completely changed me. I have to mention one point though. I thought my GP was really good at the time. He has since retired, but he did have the foresight to pre-schedule for me appointments with here in Edmonton, the Cross Cancer Institute. As well as urologist for the surgery and a thoracic surgeon to look at what was in my lungs actually, because they still weren't sure about that. So I have to credit him for that part was already all set up before I went to the meeting. And I have to, yeah, kudos to him for that, putting that all in place, because it would have been a nightmare trying to sort all that out at the beginning. So yeah, it just, yeah, it was crazy.
Well, it's just so difficult for them because, you know, when I was sick all during that year, those symptoms, and I think that's where people get confused. They'll go, well, how come they couldn't figure it out right away? And they're troubleshooting just like a mechanic troubleshoots, you know, and so many symptoms can mean so many different things, and for them to kind of narrow it down to, actually having the CT and then finding it. I don't know about you, but for me, I ended up with a 14 centimeter tumor. It was larger than the grapefruit. And I also had the full nephrectomy as well. And apparently a lot of times they only find it by accident because maybe someone was in a car accident or something, ended up with CT and caught it early. Whereas for me, it was caught when it got at the tail end. And that's great that your
Yeah,
doctor
it
had
was
that.
the same. I was thinking I probably had this for a while because I had this persistent cough. It was only when I was talking with a customer at work or something, they would say, "Are you okay?" And it started to kind of go, I would get about 3 sentences out and cough, not like a bad cough, just like clearing your throat kind of thing. I couldn't hold. And the urologist told me after, and I still don't know, but because of the size of the tumor, which was very large, it was over 10 centimeters as well, and he said it was pushing on the lower part of my lung, basically tickling the bottom of my lung.
Okay.
So when I would use my lung capacity, it would make me kind of temporarily cough, right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because for me, I didn't have that because I ended up with spots in my lung. They weren't sure at first what it was. And then, of course, in November, then they said, no, the cancer had spread to my lungs. But just before I'd gone into the hospital, I had been cutting the grass and it felt like my lungs were on fire. And I thought, oh man, maybe I've got emphysema or I've got some asthma or I've got some other kind of thing that's going on there. So it's interesting that you mentioned uh, that issue with your lungs and the coughing.
Yeah, and I still regret to this day because I was putting off that thinking it was just the cold. It was just from the flu, and it was January. It's cold out. And we actually went on a trip. It was like a work trip I went on, and although I was feeling fine, there wasn't something was wrong, and it didn't. That was the last thing I was thinking of. I had 100 other things that it could have been, but that was not one of them.
Right.
So Ron, how did that change, or how this living with this now has changed you on like life?
It's interesting because I've done a lot of introspective thinking since all of this has happened. And I feel pretty fortunate. Like I'm 62 right now. And about a decade ago, I really started reassessing things in my life and just kind of looking at things and saying, am I really heading in the direction that I want to go? And so because I did a lot of that work, I don't feel so much like my perspective on life has really changed that much. I think it's just more laser focused. And I'm more convinced that I was heading on the right path for me. I'm a person who lives in the moment. Before I was more of a person who've always planning in the future. Life is just around the corner. You're trying to achieve things, all that kind of stuff when you're young, and waiting, to really live life. And over the last decade, I started to focus more on living in the moment and not being so concerned about, should have, could have done this, should have done that. And so I guess the way I live my life, and I'm doing it even more intentionally now, is to just learn from my past, learn from anything, mistakes I've made or any experiences that I've had, including this one, which is a pretty radical and crazy change because it has in other ways upturned my life, and we'll talk about that. But learning from my past, living in the moment, but still planning for the future. I mean, I think it's important. I mean, you need to have plans, otherwise you're never going to get anywhere, but not living there, not living in the past, not living in the future, but just really being grateful for every single day. And I would say, I'm getting emotional, I could feel it.
I can't. I
I'm
can't
so
agree with you
thankful.
more on that, Ron. I can't. It's very similar. Same sort of thing. I was at the high point in my work. Like I was doing good. I had straightened a lot of things out. I had a heart attack in 2007, so I had went through some therapy, part of their program, the rehab program,
Right.
and it helped immensely with my work life. So I had finally gotten that balanced out,
Right.
and then it kind of, this kind of upended all that. But the way now I do exactly the same thing. I take the days as they are, and I don't, what I find is I'm not bothered by things that used to bother me. Like
I
if
know.
you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, it's like, whatever. Like, it's like, that's not really important in the big picture. You know, if it's a nice day out, like, you know, today, if something, it's sunny out and nice, I will forget whatever I have to do, chore wise or some other things, and I'll take off and go enjoy whatever the day is. Take the dog for a walk and enjoy the sunny day. And, you know, if it's a crappy day and not feeling good, that's the day you spend inside. But try to do more things like that. When I was on treatment, I was on a week, off a week. So I had to plan, I planned everything on those weeks that I was off. So someone would say, let's go do this, or someone would plan like, oh, let's go on vacation next March. That wasn't a thing. I didn't plan that far ahead. It was more like, well, we'll see next week. I'll probably be feeling better. So we'll do something then. Not, I didn't plan weeks out. And unfortunately, or fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know how, it depends on your point of view, but I still follow that same, you know, my wife would say, well, let's plan to go to Europe or something. I'm going, I can't even put that into my mind of how to plan for that. And I've been doing this like almost 8 years now. Like, so it's kind of ingrained in the way I think now. It's not that I'm objecting to do anything. It's more of, I'll pay the extra and do it on last minute. Like, you know, next week, and my scan was good, everything's good. Okay, we'll go. Let's go right now, like, kind of thing.
It's interesting because, and again, this will just show the difference in how people, the only difference for me is I don't hang everything on the future, but I do like the plan. And the reason that I do, and I just went on a trip even before I had got my scan. Actually, there was the scan the day before I was going to Toronto, planning to go to Toronto just this fall. And so I didn't know if I'd be able to go, because if all of a sudden the scan was bad, you have to have a good scan 90 days prior, or you just have to cancel your whole trip. And meanwhile, it's all planned. But for me, and I've already planned some stuff for next year already. And I guess for me, what it does is, even if it doesn't happen, that really doesn't matter. I still get the enjoyment all along the way because I'm imagining myself being there. And so any future plans I have, I get to savor that all along the way. And then when it actually happens, I get to really enjoy that. And then I find my vacation isn't as fast
Oh,
because I've had it for a whole year.
I'm a terrible traveler. So I like when I'm there, whenever I get to the destination, I'm good. But the whole travel process for me, I don't like it. My wife usually takes care of all that. I said, don't tell me the cost. Just tell me when I have to get on the plane.
Well, my daughter does that for me now. Because my wife just, I didn't mention this, but she passed away just a few years ago with a very rare cancer. So she had cancer. Then I had 3 close family members pass away, and then I got my diagnosis. So I've had a whirlwind of the past few years.
Oh my God, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So she used to do all that planning for me as well. But
Do you do everything yourself now?
well, I try to do what I can because of the spinal compression. I'd lost 3 inches, so my spine had compressed quite a bit. My ribs press on my hips, right? That's how much it's crushed. And so without using poles, like I use hiking poles now, I started with a walker, moved up to canes, and now I'm using trekking poles. Without them, I have about a 3 to 5 minute window to do things. And then I have to sit down because the pain is absolutely crushing. I can't even think, even with all the meds that I'm on now. And we're working on a protocol to try to improve that again. And I'm kind of going through the transition right now, which has been a little rough, but that's just part of the process. But yeah, it can be difficult. So I do get some help. My daughter will come over, and anything I can't finish off, like yesterday I was having a difficult time, so she came and filled the dishwasher and brought me supper and stuff like that. But when I can, I try to do my own laundry, take care of my own place. I've made cooking really simple. I do a lot more things like in the Instant Pot, so that if I'm in pain, I don't have to be getting up there and standing at the stove the whole time. So I've made a lot of different adjustments, but I try to be as independent as I can. How about you?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. My wife, well, she was at the beginning, she was handling all or went to all my appointments with me because I would kind of zone out or wouldn't grasp a lot of what was said. So as time went on, I was more independent. I wasn't um, as, I guess, as physically disabled as you were. Like I was more like from the side effects of the treatment, more so I couldn't do certain things, but I tried to, same thing. As my strength came back, I tried to do everything that I could myself. I guess I was fortunate enough when I was a lot younger, I had opted for the little checkbox for disability. So I was fortunate enough to be on, I had disability from work. So that helped immensely, took all that pressure about working off.
And
Speaking of that,
are you working now?
yes, no, I am not. I'm still off. Every time I went to an appointment for the first few years, I keep asking, and that was my hope. When I was well enough, they would send me back to work. As it turns out, they're not sending me back. But
I'm in the same boat as well. I started off where I went on holidays, and it's kind of stayed that way. I took disability at work, and then went on disability through my insurance from work, and now I'm on CPP disability at this
I
point.
have as well.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I actually had two operations. Like it was funny because it was like the busiest time in the career. Like it was like everything was going good. Everything, I was making the most money. I was the happiest. Everything was going good. Um, but yeah, when that happened, I actually had my nephrectomy and two wedge resections from my lung. And that was in the spring. And by fall, I was back at work. Early or late summer, I went back to work and was feeling good. I still no treatment. Everything was good. They had one met. They were kind of surveilling. That started to become aggressive, so they decided to get rid of that. To get rid of that early in December. So I went for an additional surgery in December, and then I went back. I was having lunch with the guys. Went back to almost was going back to work, going back to work, and I got really, really sick. I mean, really, I was weak. I had lost like 30 pounds, and they figured it was, I believe, nerve pain. So they were treating me for nerve pain from it's just all the cut nerves.
yeah.
Turns out it was the cancer growing back from one of the surgery sites, and it was growing back quite aggressively. So yeah, I went back and um, then I was at the cross now. So then they started putting me on therapy. Like I was on Sutent, but they started me on that. Had to get me sorted out. My blood levels were terrible. I was white as a sheet. Like I was not. I don't. I'm only relying on what my wife told me because I must have looked pretty bad. Because when I walked into the doctor's office, it wasn't in good shape. But they've sort of got me stabilized and then started me on the treatment and then pushed me towards if I'd be open to the clinical trial that they had at the time.
Right.
Which it was about adjusting dosages and increasing more for the increasing dosages. But so I did apply for that. I was accepted, and I went forward on that. So I never went back to work after that because I was constantly on treatment.
So I mean, we pretty much talked about our professional lives. I mean, we don't have one. How was that? Well, actually, I'm going to share something with you, and then I'm curious about how that makes you feel, because I think for some people to have been at the height, and I was at the height of my career. I was a director dealing with 18 to 25-year-olds in a college setting, for leadership and loving what I was doing. And then for me, completely unable to work. And it was kind of a shock to me because I thought I'd 8 weeks 10 weeks, I'll be going back to work. That's what I had in my head. And then all of a sudden I wasn't going. But for me, I miss it. I miss what I was doing because I loved what I was doing. But I think at my point in life, I'm glad that I got to the point where my professional life didn't define me. Um,
Yeah.
you know, when I was younger, it mattered. Like it was almost like who I am and what I do were the same thing. And as the years went on, it became, well, my occupation is another way to express myself. You know, I want to be able to, you know, I was dealing with young people and helping them get started in life. And, you know, for me, that was really exciting. And I loved doing that. And it was a way for me to be able to give back. Um, but my job didn't define me. And, you know, I'm thankful for that because all I've done is I've gone from being productive that way to just finding other outlets to be productive.
I
Um,
can't agree more. Yeah.
and so, like, I've picked up photography. Like, I had photography before, but I've really picked it up and taking it a lot more serious now. Um, I hadn't done any drawing in the creative sense since I was in elementary school. And now I'm drawing and I'm finding I'm actually pretty good at that and kind of getting into the painting end of things. I'm making connections with colleagues still, and I've kept those connections up because they'll disappear if you don't keep that going. And I've kept that as friendships now. Um, and then connections with alumni and old students and going out for coffee with them and, you know, still checking in on them and seeing how their life's going. And then sharing my photography online with some of my thoughts and different things. And I just think that, you know, even if you're at a point where you're technically unable to work, and that's only because I can't work straight 8 hours and or 12 hours or whatever it is that's needed to do, I can still be productive. And I think it's instead of defining yourself by your job, I think you need to go, how do I want to express myself? How do I want to give back? And what's important in life to me? And the bottom line is relationships are the most important thing to me. I mean, that's what life's about. And I can't remember who said it, but he had said, life is about relationships and everything else is just details. And so for me, any way that I can make connection, that makes life worthwhile to me. So that's kind of where I am. For you, how are you dealing with the fact of not having that professional life right now?
Yeah. I had, yeah, the group, the core group that I was with at work, uh, even though when I got sick, I still saw them as soon as I could see them. And I went out for lunch every Friday, anticipating that I would be coming back at some point. So, you know, they would keep me abreast of what was happening. In fact, some of my projects that we were working on were still ongoing for a couple of years after I had taken off. So I was, you know, keeping in the loop that way. As that all faded away, um, I still to this day, I mean, COVID's kind of messed things up a bit, but still, we still go out every week when we can. Maybe it's now more like a month, and we still get together and talk about what's going on in the office, or they get to vent on me, and you know, because I don't have the stress of, but I get to listen to what was going on. So I've kept that way. Same thing, I took on other things. I was a draftsman by trade, so I loved like drawing and things of that nature. Um, so I thought, okay, I'm off. I'm going to start doing things on my own. Um, and I came up with ended up with a macular hole in my eye, and that's messed up my vision. So I can't concentrate. So I've lost part of that hobby part of me that wanted to draw and things like that. So when you say you took up that, that was, yeah, I'm going, oh yeah, I tried. I bought the sketchbook, but my eyes can't focus the same way anymore. Um, you know, there's lots that keeps me busy. People always ask, the funny thing is, whenever I'm away or meeting somebody says, what have you been doing with your time? And I go, I don't know, but I'm busy.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
busy doing something. I've taken up cycling and um, more religiously, I guess. Even trying in all seasons cycling to
And I
keep,
can't cycle. See, so now you
yeah,
can't draw, I can't cycle.
you know,
I like cycling.
it's always, yeah, it's always a trade-off someplace, right? So you find something else to fill that, but there's always something that that fills that time. I never said that I was sitting around feeling depressed or sorry for myself or something. I try not to go into that headspace. That's very difficult, but I always view it as kind of like at that point, there's a point where everybody was with me on the same road, and I took a path. I had to take a path that was different, and everyone else that I know took this other path. So they're living a completely different life than I'm living, and
Yep,
they can't see what I see on my path, but I can remember what it was like on the other path.
yep.
So
And I completely relate to that. You know, it's funny because people don't recognize they think if you kind of look towards the positive, that somehow you're pretending that bad things don't happen. And I mean, you and I are good examples of where bad things can happen in life. You know, you end up with kidney cancer and you end up having surgery and everything. That's not pleasant. But it isn't about that. There's bad things. And if you want to look for them, you can find tons of them. Like, I mean, if you want to spend the time looking for it. But if you want to take the time to find a lot of good things, there's a lot of good things. I'm the same as you. I'd rather fill up my headspace and my life with all the good that's out there rather than wasting my time pulling in all the stuff that's bad.
I won't lie to you and say there isn't dark times,
Oh, of course.
but I try to move past them. Like I
Right.
guess I feel entitled to have that point to get through it,
Yes.
find a way to get through it, and then move on. Even though when I was really sick, I was always I was occupied by what's next. Like okay, so you're doing this, then what are you going to do to me? And then what are you going to do? What's the next thing before you run out of things to do?
Yeah.
Like just okay. I was open. I guess part of it is being open to I guess it would be like challenges or changes, adapting to changes in your life and things, and just being open to those changes and taking some advice from professionals, doctors, that this is the right way. Or, I mean, I could have, I thought about this after, and maybe it's not even quite related to what we were talking about, but um, it was like you see in the movies where people get diagnosed with something, terrible disease of any sort, and they have their bucket list and they say, oh, I'm going to do this, and this. And it's, and then they die kind of thing. And I was always, that was probably a choice, but I don't really have a bucket list. But,
I don't either.
but I just said, well, I'm not going to do the bucket list thing. So I have the equal chance of you helping me with treatment that is rough. There was never any hiding or sugarcoating that. It's not going to be a pleasant thing. But there is a chance that you might live a little longer than the 12 months they gave me or 24 months they gave me originally. So I was more willing to take that chance. I'll take some of that pain and suffering, and maybe I might get through this longer. So it's kind of a,
It's just interesting because talking to you, I just can't believe how many similarities there are in that. Yeah, because for me, it's the same thing. It's not a bucket list. I'm already living my life. And it's funny because people will say, well, same with the pandemic, same with kidney cancer. It's like, don't you want to get back to normal life? And I said, well, I'm living life. This is
yeah,
life.
they're just obstacles or changes or things that are in the life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not waiting for, yeah. There's a lot of parallels to the COVID thing. I have to say, like when people put the restrictions that we had and everyone, I've been doing this for 5 years already. So
Yeah.
watching of, being careful, and this isn't a big stretch for me, but some
No, in
people,
fact, I didn't find it encroached on me much at all.
no, not really. Just some of the family stuff.
Yeah.
Family stuff. My parents live in Manitoba, so I couldn't travel there. Things like that. I couldn't see them. They were locked up there. But yeah, it's like, yeah, no, this is just my normal, this is what I've been doing for, well, for me, it was like 4 or 5 years at that point already.
Yeah. And I think you said something important, and I feel the same way, is it is about focus. It isn't about like, because you were saying, there's dark days sometimes. And I think, and I allowed myself, and I'm thinking you probably did by the way you were talking, you've allowed yourself to be emotional. It's like, when there's tough things and whatever, there's nothing wrong with any of the emotions that we have. We can be
No, not at
sad
all.
or angry or frustrated or whatever those things are. But then once I've had that moment, now it's like, what's next? Like, what is it I want? And to
Yeah,
start going towards something that I want to have instead of focusing on what I don't. And it was the same thing when you were talking about the cycling. I would love to cycle, but I've just found a lot of other things that I can do. And I would rather look at the thing I can do than not, because even before I couldn't cycle, there were still lots of things I couldn't do. Like I couldn't fly to the moon, right? Like I don't have those credentials yet. So that was something I couldn't do, but I didn't sit there and worry about it. And the same thing here. I'm going to focus on, what I can.
yeah.
Um, how else has it changed your personal life?
Not a whole lot. Um, Mostly, I would say if anything changed, it was the more of the social aspect. I'm not a outward social person. I'm more of an introvert. So our social circle changed somewhat just because people are doing things differently than what we would do. So it kind of, yeah, it changed, but not, I never viewed it so much for as bad. It just changed. It's just different. Like you said, it's just, I'm not saying I want it the way it was before. We met some new people, um, but we still have our old people, but we don't always connect the same way because their lives are changing in different ways, maybe that I'm not aware of to mine. And they can't understand mine. I don't understand theirs. It's just, yeah, they're just people on different paths. But yeah, I can't say that my personal life has changed a lot. I mean, aside from work, that was a big change. But once I got past that everybody, including the insurance, are saying, no, you're not going back because, unless I force the issue, I mean, the doctor would have to force it, but um, nobody's saying that I should or can even for that matter. So
What about, or maybe not with people, but what about just even in your daily routines and like, have you found limitations or other things that are maybe different or a little more difficult than they were before?
yeah, I would say when I was on treatment, so I was taken off treatment at the beginning of 2019, I want to say. Um, that it was just the treatment was just too damaging to the rest of my body. It was just doing too much damage at that point because I had been on it for over 5 years. So up to that point, yeah, like I said, everything was like based on I can't do anything this week. I can do whatever I can the following week. That's kind of how my life was. And once that was gone, I looked forward like, oh, I'm off. It's like having a break. I'm off treatment finally. Like, and I can go do this, that, and the other thing. And then we know what happened at the end of 2019 into 2020. So I felt like I was cheated there a bit, maybe. I feel a little bit cheated. I had freedom at the same time people were taking away, you know. So, but no. How about yourself though?
For me, it was more, I guess the biggest thing is one, like just prior to my diagnosis, I had lost my wife. So, I mean, that's a
That's a
huge
big
life
change.
change there. And then with the things that I've gone through, like I need more help and, just being willing to do that because I was used to being, I was very athletic and, I was in good shape and able to completely take care of myself. And I've just needed to be willing to rely on people a lot more, and especially on my family and friends and that. It's more difficult for me to drive. I can drive for about 20 minutes or so. and then it's just too uncomfortable because there's too much pressure on my spine. Um, I need to plan more ahead because there's some things like if I got to go across the city, I need my daughter to drive me. To do groceries, I need somebody to help me out with that because I can't lift it. Otherwise, I could end up injuring my spine. Um, I would say those would be the biggest things. It's more the physical limitations. I would say my relationships are better than they've ever been. So, I mean, that's a good thing. Just from, you know, having people help you, that's going to either draw you closer or pull you apart. And for me, it's made my relationships much closer. It takes longer for me to get ready, just those kinds of things. But I would say it's more the physical limitations. I would say my personal life itself. No, I feel that my quality of life and things are actually quite good.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Like the close really like kids, my wife, those became closer, of course, like kind of naturally. It didn't become distant because it can do that. I think in some people it can split people apart, but ours became more closer, more understanding, and things like that. Yeah, and we had lots of help. And I think that's probably a key thing is that not everybody has that moral, physical and moral support, like people to help out. And that would be challenging. And I can't even pretend to know what that is because I never had to experience that. I
Right.
was fortunate enough that we had support, even though my family is, thousands of kilometers away. The my brother and my mom, my dad, all that kind of support was all just by phone call. It was just basically my immediate family, right? So yeah.
How did you find other people, like, and again, it ties into personal life, other people with you being sick, were they uncomfortable? Were they sure not how to talk to you? How did you find things?
Uh, Not, I didn't get that because it happened really fast. When I found out, I went to work the next day. A few close people found out right away. And boom, I was out and on the short term, put me on short term red said go home. And really, I never, the joke is people didn't realize for almost like months, 6 months, that I wasn't even there. So,
Right.
I'm like, oh, I was that important, eh? Um, but uh, I no, I don't think people treat it differently. What I felt, and maybe that's unique to because it wasn't obvious except for my hair change. I went white, which is common. Um, People just um, didn't understand it. I found a kidney cancer. People don't understand it. People get
No,
all
they
the
don't.
other ones, but they
Yeah.
don't get this. They go, well, you didn't lose your hair. You're not, you don't really look that sick.
Well, that's the thing that I get.
Yeah,
Oh
you're not,
man, I can't
you don't
believe
look
it.
sick.
You're not at work, but you look so good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be, if anything, that would be the thing. Maybe it's just that part. Maybe it's education. It's not. I always said people ask me. I says it's not one of the popular ones to get all the press, all the galas, all the lottery things around it. It's a very it's the outcast, almost like an outcast one of the cancers. Like it's like, you got kidney cancer. Oh, what's that? Like nobody knows. So they can't ask you questions like, oh, my mom had that or my dad had that or,
Yeah, I found
it's
the
not.
same thing. It's almost like they're interested, but you almost need to educate them.
Yes.
And
And
then,
that's
and then,
sometimes,
and they like to hear. It's just that they just don't know what to say or what to ask or whatever. And it was funny because someone else was saying to me, well, you don't need to make people feel comfortable. And I said, well, it benefits me if I do,
mhm.
right? Because then it opens that dialogue and then it makes them free to ask things. And I just let them know right up, it's fine. You can ask me anything you like. I've got no problem with that. And just sort of open those lines of communication. And, then they do check up on you more and they do. So.
Of course, yes. And they I actually had somebody, it was actually someone close. They kind of said like when the vaccines were out for COVID and said like, you don't qualify for the early shot because you're not sick, right? And I had to point out that no, my kidney filtration was, even if it wasn't for the cancer part, it was my kidney filtration was, the numbers were below, were not that good. They fell into the criteria. Says on that alone, but I felt guilty. I was sitting there feeling guilty. Well, maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe somebody else deserves it more or something. And I went, no, people, then my wife would say, no, this is clear that you fall right under that.
Yeah, everyone else knows better than we do. We always think we're better off a lot of times in ways than we really are, and that's where you really need to listen to your family, the professionals, or whatever when they're talking to you, because all of a sudden, even when I was looking through, because I had the same situation as you, my doctor retired, so I ended up getting all of my medical records, and then I had to pass them on. So I actually read through everything they had, and I was thinking, yeah, I knew all this, but now reading this, it's just way more stark when I was actually
A lot of,
reading it from the records, right? And going, wow, I am entitled to get that booster shot. I am. I agree. I'm curious, Doug, through all of this, how have you dealt with anxiety? Because you mentioned before there's dark days, tough times. Like what have you done to kind of deal with that?
the anxiety. Oh, I had anxiety before. So going into this whole experience, I was, yeah, I kind of fell under the high anxiety category, um, dealing with it in different ways. I was managing it pretty good. Ugh. Yeah, once I was off work, I guess it gave me time to explore other methods of dealing with the anxiety part. So my favorite one still to this day is just distraction. Like if I find at night, it's usually at night, so my sleep is not good, has never returned proper. Um, if I wake up in the middle of the night with that feeling and then start to go down this really dark way, I'll pick up, I read a lot. I've read a lot now since I've been off. So I'll read a bit. It'll distract my mind into whatever the story may be. And I tend to forget. And then, like I said, it's a distraction. Same as the biking for me. I go away and it breaks up um, my thinking process, I guess. It puts a break in it, puts the stops on it. Um, that I would recommend if there's, and I asked, there really isn't a lot of professional help for people with kidney cancer. I mean, as far as psychiatrist type, therapist type stuff, I find that, well, at least my experience is they're very generic. Um, so I think that's a path that would be good for some people. What I found, it didn't give me what I wanted. Going like, I know this already. I've taken
I know.
courses on.
I see someone through cancer care in Manitoba, and they're a therapist. And but for me, what I wanted, and everybody wants a different thing, and what I just wanted was someone where, as I'm sorting things out and trying to think things through, to have someone just listen
Mhm.
and and interject here and there, and not necessarily solve my problems or anything else, but just be there as a listening ear. So for me, in that respect, it's been helpful for me. Whereas if someone, they're not going to tell me a lot of new stuff because I've done a lot of research. I don't know about you, but I have. Um, but just that ear where I'm not just chewing off my family's ear,
Yeah.
and kind of spreading it around a little bit. And sometimes they've had some insightful things for me. So my experience has been actually pretty good.
Yeah, and I have to say that I had, like I mentioned earlier, I had a heart attack before this, and that when I went through that rehab, part of that new program, they were trying something new, was to add a psychologist or a therapist to the mix, and it was optional because of the stigma attached to it. But I found that very helpful, and they were really, really good listening and gave me lots of good, and I still use them to this day. So maybe that's why I haven't sought that out, because
That makes sense.
the tools and like just opening to new things, like, you know, more on the meditation side of the calming techniques, or the all those things seem to work well. But I use them, still use them, even if I go to a doctor's appointment, I still use them. I mean, I remember being in the hospital and all I did was count. I watched the clock and I counted, and it just, your mind just focused so intensely on that, that it kind of took you away from whatever was happening
Yeah.
momentarily, and then it would straighten you out.
Well, I think what people don't realize is that, you know, when the anxiety is a result of thinking, because you can get anxious feelings from other things too, but if it's from thinking, you can only think of one thing at a time. And so that distraction, like you said, when you're reading, well, you can't be reading and thinking about something else. You can't be concentrating on, you know, something that takes intense focus and then be focusing on something else. And I'm the same as you. I find that for me, the therapist has been helpful. The research has been helpful. Getting it from the right place, not having Google as my authority, because man, you start going down that, that's a black hole that'll
For
take
sure.
you in some crazy places. And you got people saying all kinds of crazy things online that may have nothing to do with you. And now all of a sudden you're just full of fear. So asking doctors lots of questions if there's things that I didn't understand, making sure I get sleep, not worrying about when I don't sleep, because at first that bothered me. Oh, that's not healthy. That's not good for me. Now all of a sudden I'm creating anxiety from that, and just going, whenever I sleep, I sleep. And taking that pressure off has been helpful. Going for walks for me has been a huge, a weighted blanket. I didn't even know what that would be like. My daughter got me one, and I was having nerve pain, and I just went through a thing because I adjusted my meds recently.
Right.
And all of a sudden, a bunch of nerve pain came back, and it felt like my extremities were freezing cold, and then they were hot, and then they were prickly and whatever. And just putting that blanket on, the pressure, it took a lot of that away. Letting go of what I don't have control over, like really looking at it and going, wait a second, can I control this? Like if it's my kidney cancer, well, I couldn't control that, but what can I do in response to it? I'm not able to sleep, but what can I do in response? Well, I'm not sleeping. Well, I might as well get up and read for a while, or I might as well, right? Um, Allowing myself to be emotional, that's been helpful. And saying no emotion is wrong, just maybe the way I handle it could or be good or not, but the emotion, allowing that, meditating, taking time to think about the things I'm grateful for and thankful for, and planning for things that I want, and that's been really helpful for me. I think just being grateful. I liked what someone else has said to me, and it stuck to me all these years, and I used it even going through this was, you know what, Ron, I know it's going to be a good day. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, because I'm not 6 feet under. And
Yeah.
I could have been 6 feet under during my surgery. I could have been 6 feet under when I had my acute kidney injury in February, and I'm alive. And
Yeah, the joke was that every day you wake up without a toe tag is a good day.
you betcha. And then, you know, each person their own higher power, whatever. For me, my faith in God has been huge for me. So those would be the things that have helped me, I would say,
That,
cope.
that's an interesting point, because when I had talked to a therapist, and that was the one thing I says, I wish I had, because although I'm spiritual, I'm not quite as religious as perhaps other people, and I envied that in other people. I said that what you get from that faith, or the healing you get from that, I says I don't get it. Like it doesn't happen. So she put me on to some other things, and that are equal. And I was open to looking. She says, "Are you open to looking at other things that might give you that?" And I did, and they worked. So it was kind of. I do remember still to this day, my neighbor, they gave me I want to call it like a prayer blanket, if you will. It had the three colors in there. One was healing, one was rejuvenation. One was something, I forgot what the third one was, 3 colors stitched in there. And that I felt so good from that. I'm going, there is something to that. Like that it immensely make me feel better all of a sudden.
Well, because I mean, I think most people feel there's something beyond us, and I think that you know if the only thing we have faith is just in us, that's kind of
Yeah,
a scary place to be. So yeah,
has to be
um,
something bigger for sure. I
yeah,
have to add one thing though. It was when I was off, I had a conversation with the oncologist one day, and I kept pushing. I want to go back to work, and am I well enough? Can I go back to work? Because to me, I thought of going back to work as being I'm either cured or better, or that was how I related it. So I was thinking when they do that, that's my sign that I'm better, right? Um, but he threw something back at me. He says, "Did you ever think that because you're off, that you're taking care of yourself? I can see you're taking care of yourself better. That because you're doing the extra care, looking after yourself, that this is the reason why you're doing well,
yes,
as opposed to being on the same treatment but not doing well because maybe you're too stressed with work, you're working too much, or your your mind is occupied with other things, not focusing on your own body. Sort of that mind thing, right? Your state of mind, right? Um, I don't know if there's anything to it, but I believed him.
no, I think that's really important because I think that's the one thing that if we're not careful, people keep giving, 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 and doing, 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 and you can't give what you don't have. And so I don't know if you remember, but I remember that story years ago when I was a kid about the goose laying the golden eggs, and I mean, if you're not careful, you can kill the goose, and we're the goose. And, we have to take care of ourselves. It's very difficult to be able to help anyone else if you're not, helping yourself first. And so I think, and I think that takes sort of into kind of takeaways because I think it's important for people to, have takeaways. And I've been kind of thinking about, what are important things that I think people should know just from my perspective. And I think that's one of them is, loving yourself. If you're looking relationally, because relationships, I was saying relationships are the most important thing and everything else is details. Loving yourself, for me, uh, in faith, loving God, and then, just loving other people. So to me, that's critical. Um, I would say the second thing for me is focus, and you mentioned that you were talking about the different things that you were focusing on. You can only focus on one thing at a time. So for me, it would be focusing on what I can do and not what I can't. I wrote down here what I have, not what I don't, and what I've gained, not what I've lost. Um, Letting go of things I don't have control over because I can't control anybody else. I can't control all my circumstances. I can't control what other people do, but I always get to choose my response. And I'm not talking about being emotional. You could be overwhelmed with emotion and that's fine. But moving forward from that, I do get to choose my next step. And then just being grateful and being thankful for the people in my life, for the things that I have, even this imperfect body that I'm dealing with, that I'm dragging around right now. But you know what? I can be thankful that I can at least drag it around. You know what I mean? I'm believing for better than that. I would like to, you know, I would love to just have my whole body healed and have no issues and whatever. But I can be content in the moment.
I
That's
have
kind
to,
of,
yeah, I have to agree with you on most of those are excellent takeaways. I mean, I always viewed it as I wasn't supposed to get as far as I am now. So every day I look back is an experience I wouldn't have had.
yeah,
So you can make it another day, you can look back and say, well, that's what happened on those. Like I got to see this, or I got, even if it's bad stuff, at least I know about that. I was always like, life is like a movie that you never want to end because you never don't want to find out at the end. You don't want to don't want to skip to the end. You just want to see what's in between. or like a good book or a story or something, right? When it's over, it's like, oh, like, so you want it to keep going and
Absolutely.
what happens next, because you want to always see what happens. That's for me. I always want to, well, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next month? Like, like, is, the world going to change differently again, or is there something new that's going to come up, or, is, one of my kids going to go through a positive, like going to get married or something? There's always
Mine is, by
something.
the way.
What's that?
My daughter's getting married in
Oh,
the spring.
congratulations.
Yeah, and then actually they had initially given me a very poor prognosis, which now I'm stable. Gave me a very poor prognosis. Now they have no idea how long, but right from day one, just what you were saying, I kept saying to them, even my doctors, my daughter, whatever, well, I can live for decades though, right? Like there have been miracles, right? Like you have seen them, right? Yep, yep, okay. And that's kind of the mindset that I have, the same as you. I've always been a wide-eyed kind of person.
Yeah,
And I look at my wife would always joke and go, people aren't going to get it. They're going to, think it's silly that you kind of, but I mean, I don't know. I love life. And so I don't like these sucky things that I've had to deal with. That's not fun. But I've always had some challenges or things in my life. I've always had things that you don't like or circumstances that I've had to face or challenges I've had to overcome. So why should it be any different now?
exactly.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I have to agree with all those. Yeah, the key points. I would want to probably add to that about like sort of, and you touched on it. You just take on the challenges, adapt to what's going on, and not let it completely overrule what you're going through. I mean, you could focus on, okay, I'm not. I remember the first time the doctor told me again. The first question I asked him was, will I make it to my daughter's graduation? Do I have that long? And that was 6 months away. So I had already decided that I wasn't going to make it 6 months. So everything, you start to, yeah, you look back and go, I can change the challenges, adapt to it. I mean, totally a little bit off topic. I would say that I was fortunate enough to be on or was offered a clinical trial in a center, like in the cancer center here. I learned so much from that. So even if you don't stay on it for very long, if someone is uh, able to take a clinical trial on something, you learn at the beginning. If you know nothing, you learn so much from those, and that became, I could advocate better for myself. I knew the questions to ask because I knew what they were looking for. Like, I mean,
Right.
I knew like what my blood test meant, what when they were screening my blood, what they were looking for. I understood what they were looking for, and I was able to almost not self-diagnose, but know when I knew my blood work was off because of this, right? Or they would say that and I knew exactly why. Not as oh, we're going to reduce your intake because, just because. And you go, well, why? And then we tell you and you go, oh, that makes sense now. I understand. So part of that living with it is becoming your own advocate because no one's going to do it for you.
No, I agree. I mean, you have to be the primary.
Because I remember sitting at clinic days and I would listen to other people sometimes just talking and how they were so upset because the doctor was 5 minutes late or like he's making us wait and going, well, they got a lot it's like, why are you worried about that? Like, and they got to get back to wherever it was. And yeah, it's
And their
dwelling on
lives,
that kind of
their
stuff.
lives are chaos. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on. I can't. I've had nothing but good experience. Really, I'm so impressed by the
And I had
healthcare.
the same thing. All my experience was good there. I never really had one bad
Yeah.
with any of the medical stuff. And that I could never understand why people were mad because something was delayed or whatever. Just yeah. But that was one of my things, was just taking advantage if there is a clinical trial, or if at the very least you're finding out more about what they do and what your tests and things involve, like just understanding it a little bit better, that kind of, and all of the points you touched on, so I won't repeat them, but a lot of the stuff you touched on as well, living differently. And I guess it's different. I guess it's different. my experience from what I've said is from my viewpoint, and I realize there's other situations and other people will have a very different saying, well, you had this, I don't have that, right? So one thing is like this kidney cancer, Canada for one, like it didn't really, it wasn't on my radar when I first was diagnosed.
It wasn't on mine either.
My wife was actually on a Facebook group out of the US, the Kidney Cancer US. So whenever I had really bad days or really bad things happening, she would go on there and found out that no, you weren't alone. This other guy did that. He got through this part. You just have to keep going, or they'll fix this. And then I found out I wasn't this, much like we're talking, going, it's the same thing. A lot of this experiences are the same. So that's one thing when I've joined on with kidney cancer and just sitting and listening to the different stories. Everybody's kind of different experiences, but a lot of common experiences, I guess is what I would say. Yeah.
A lot of commonalities for sure. For me, honestly, it's just been great talking with you, Doug.
Same
You
here,
know,
Ron.
and I just hope that, people have something that they can take away and use from this. I mean, I think, like you said, there's been a lot of things that are common that we've faced, and I'm sure that other people have faced. And I don't know. I think I'd like to end off by saying, don't be alone. Reach out. Make sure, with kidney cancer, I would be reaching out here. And you had someone, your wife by your side. I had my daughter by my side. Sometimes things are foggy, and don't be afraid to get help. And I've just really enjoyed spending time talking with you and getting to know you a little better.
Same here, Ron. I echo all your sentiments. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like seek out, and I realize that kidney cancer is harder to seek out that sort of someone to talk to that understands, because there's less. Maybe if there was more people on the, I guess as there's more people maybe on the, when they have the coffee chats and whatever, it's a good place to, even if you don't say anything, you just listen, and it helps that other people's experiences, and sometimes you learn new things every time, for sure.
For sure.